Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Our Life Begins and Always. So, I decided to do another moment today, since I have time to do it. We left off doing Swearway, where you got to date Cove for the first time. You felt a little awkward about it at first, I think, and then I think you kind of rolled back into it because this is just one of those things he wasn't really used to doing. So we had to try and console him that it's okay, things are okay, you know. And eventually he came back around to it, and then he went back into the dance floor and danced a little bit more. So yeah. We're going to do the final moment for step 2, which is and then summer ended. Now let me grab my keyboard. Trying to get comfortable here. Boy. There was no denying it. Today was the very last day of summer. Tomorrow you were heading to class. Let's see. Second one. Anxiety gnawed at your stomach. Going back to school meant heading over to anatomy. You had over the past weeks. Sorry about that. You had very little control over what you did at school or who you shared a class with. Excuse me. There we go. It was a heavy heart that you chose your outfit for your final day of freedom. Life was going to be different. You had to think of the summer vacation as the norm. But school sucked up the majority of the year, whereas the summer vacation was just a respite in the middle. So rather it being different, it was kind of a return to normal. What did your normal life really mean? You considered how fondly your moms talked about their summer vacations as kids. dimly recognized that one year the pattern of school and summer itself would be over for good. It was hard to imagine. You'd gotten distracted, one arm still out of a sleeve. You pulled it through and put your mind back to the present. This season had brought about plenty of changes of its own, like Kara's visit, though that too was coming to an end today. Let's see. Okay. I'm gonna go with the first one. You were happy you'd finally gotten the chance to know her. She was interesting to be around. You liked how easy it was to talk to her. Finished excuse me. You finished dressing, which was good. Cove would be there any moment. You agreed to see his mom off together. Officially, the plan was that he would come over to bring you round to his house when she was ready to set off. But you both knew that you'd be hanging out for at least a little while beforehand. Kara's visit had troubled Cove when it first happened. It had been a sudden change, thanks to Mr. Holden's infamous tendency to surprise people. But once he was able to adjust, he'd been in pretty good spirits with her around. It was a relief for everyone. The next thought that crossed her mind was, I'm gonna go with the second one. You couldn't wait to see Cove. You went downstairs to meet him when he arrived. You bonded down the stairs, your hand gliding over the rail. You wanted to make sure you got there first. If you didn't hurry, your mom's might answer it. It was a few minutes later then the doorbell rang. As you chosen to stand beside it to wait for Cove. There was no delay in pulling it open. Cove was there, just as you expected. Seeing you, he flashed you a bright grin.
Hey.
Hi, Chippy. Hi, Cove. Come on in. Once he stepped inside, you beckoned for him to follow you upstairs. Back up in your room, you sat down on your bed and waited for Cove to settle in as you knew he would. With other guests, you might have offered them a seat, but you and Cove were long past those tentative stages of friendship. Your room was as familiar to him as his own. You watched as Cove sat down on your desk chair, his preferred spot. He rolled it closer to the bed to make it easier to chat, tweaking the angle so that he was facing you fully. Once happy with the position, he leaned in towards you, hands held in his lap. His actions weren't the ones of someone who planned on moving from his spot anytime soon, even though you had an appointment to keep together that day. When is your mom leaving?
Don't worry about it.
We've got time. She's still gotta shower and stuff before she goes. She didn't want me to just keep hanging around while she was doing that. He lifted his head, his gaze drifting out through the window, and chuckled. I can't believe she's already leaving, just when I'm used to her being there every day. He leaned back in the chair, a wry smile tickling his cheeks. I'm gonna go with number 3. She'll be back. Either you'll get to go see her. He cocked his head thoughtfully before shrugging. He ran a hand through his hair before shaking his head as if shaking off the topic, like a dog whipping off water flowing a dip in the sea. Silence stretched out between you. Quiet didn't survive long around you, but you held off a shaking in this one. Cove's expression, from the way he began to chew his lip to deepening lines of worry in his face, suggested that it was a prelude to something else. He started to curl in on himself, draping an arm across his lap. Cove was looking less and less comfortable in the space as you watched him wondering what to do. Chippy, says Cove. Cove spoke up before you had made a decision on whether or not to push him on what the matter was. There was a tremor in his voice that you rarely heard while the two of you were in the safety of your room.
I mean,
I wanted to talk to you about the road trip. What happened then? Your eyes grew at the reaction. Cove pulled his arms around his chest, his shoulders hunching inwards. You knew what he was implying. Back when you'd been in the loft and nearly kissed. Cove hadn't breathed a word about it since it happened. Or well, almost happened.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry for moving away like that when you tried to. He dropped silence. You didn't push him to finish. It had conveyed what it needed. And I'm sorry for how I've been since. Acting like it didn't even happen. I've thought about it, says Cove. I mean, I haven't forgotten about it. I didn't keep thinking about it all the time. He hung his head checked, his red checked forehead popped up by a couple of fingers. You could tell that he was already regretting how this was going.
Sorry.
Sorry for being weird. It's just I kind of thought or hoped that sometime I'd be able to do this with me talking about everything. Everything? There's more? I asked. He nodded over slightly. Your face felt a lot hotter than that. Cove brightened a little at your positive reaction, and his explanation continued. I, could sort of picture how it might go. What I'd be like with you and me, says Cove. But just the first part. I couldn't ever imagine anything that come after. And now it's actually happened. We're there. He took another deep breath, stuttering on the exhale.
That's,
This makes things different, says Cove. I'm gonna go with number 3. Should we find a crystal ball for answers? I don't think we'd see anything, says Cove. Nothing? That's kind of sad for us. That isn't what I meant. It's just they can't really show you the future. They're just glass, says Cove. You're happy to see him being livelier. His wide eyes met yours as he looked at you, less burdened from the anxiety that had built inside him. Do you want to try again? No. The word shot out reflexively. He couldn't help it, but immediately cringed at himself. Do you really mean that? I asked. No, says Cove. I mean, I do want to. I want to try again, if you still want to, says Cove. We're going for the kiss. This is the kissing moment. You kissed him. You untangled yourself from your resting position and stood up, realizing your intent to actually go for it. Cove straightened up in the chair, his hands coiled together in his lap. As you moved toward him, you noticed his knees knocking together as he trembled. His decision not to rise from the chair made perfect sense. If he was that shaky while sitting down, there was no way he'd manage to stand without at least one of you falling over. Your legs brushed against his quivering ones as you came to stop in front of him. Cove was staring up at you. As you leaned in towards him, he echoed the motion and drew in towards you. Once you were close enough to feel Cove's breath on your face, you closed your eyes. The last thing you saw was Cove quickly doing the same. Your lips met with Cove's for a moment. His lips were pressed tightly together, unyielding, but it was all right. You were kissing him, and he was kissing you. Your stomach somersaulted. You couldn't believe it was really happening. In that moment, it felt warm, and it felt nice, and it felt right. You drew back, and Cove slipped down into the chair. The knuckles of his hands pale after gripping so tightly. Thinking that he could do with some space to breathe, fidgetly and literally, you took a step back. Cove shut up, his stance rigid. Cove plastered a hand over his mouth. His eyes shut tight. His back then became bowed, shrinking him down. You could only just make out a few words he had managed to summon,
Oh my god, oh my god!
says Cove. I can't believe we actually... His eyes flew open wide, but he didn't look your way, let alone meet your gaze.
Oh my god!
We kissed, says Cove. His reaction was really cute. You watched him you watched him angrily as he tried to gather his senses. Cove only slammed his eyes closed once again. Okay. It was nice, wasn't it? I asked. He is still holding the hand to his face, but an abrupt attempt to answer, he emitted a muffled whimper. With that obviously not working, he uncovered his face, at least, bringing the hand to lay against his chest, and looked at you. Yeah, says Cole. He opened his mouth, poised to speak, and pursued his lips as words failed him. On his third or fourth attempt, he heard what he had to say. I did like it. I'm glad that we, says Cove. He swallowed, seemingly not able to speak the actual word. That we kissed? I asked. Cove ducked his head, but nodded. You got the impression that he was grateful that you'd finished the thought, but your direct words had pierced his Achilles heel. You grinned, thrilled that the experience had been a welcome one. The smile on Cole's face was real but hurry, not unlike the one he wore after a long and exhausting day of activity. Like when he made a new personal best. The work had been hard, but the reward had been worth it. With some newfound confidence, he drew himself up as he inhaled deeply. Each word he spoke next was delicate. Chippy, I like you, says Cove. A lot, probably way too much, says Cove. He ducked his head bashfully and opened an eye, peeking at you through the hair that had fallen over his face like a veil. He managed a smile.
Thanks for waiting for me.
Says Cove. And thank you for doing your own words. His eyes sparkled just looking at you. His affection transparently clear. He never could hide what he was falling, and you couldn't be more grateful for that today. You hugged him. You closed already short distance between you and Cove and wrapped your arms around him. He looked down to meet your eyes and giggled nervously. He did his best to wind his arms around you in return. It was a little awkward, but even with the benefit of his hindsight, you wouldn't have changed a thing. The strength of your feelings had demanded immediate action. It felt so nice to hold each other that way, now that everything was out in the open. Finally, you separated again. You rubbed his eyes with the heel of his hands. It was an action usually reserved for much later in the day. But at this point, it already felt like a long day. Good. There we go. Cove then pressed a hand to his creased forehead.
Oh my god.
Does this mean I'm your boyfriend or something? Now? Should we tell our parents? I don't know what Dad or Mom would do, says Cove. There were a lot of concerns in there. You honed in on the simplest. There was no way your moms would let you have a boyfriend, even though that word juxtaposed with Cove's name made your heart race. My parents won't let me have a boyfriend, even a something. I'm gonna go with the fourth one. It doesn't matter, though. We like each other, and that's what's important. Nothing anybody else thought about your relationship changed what it was between the two of you. Cove lifted his hand from his chest and reached towards you, halting halfway, then slowly, cautiously hooked his fingers around yours. His palm pressed against the back of your hand. You You hold his hand back. You rotated your hand so that you were palm to palm with Cove, your thumbs crossing one another. We can get it to work. We always figure things out sooner or later, says Cove. You're right. No matter what, that's okay. In the end, it's the two of us. Your foresight statement made Cove gasp, but the smile that followed and his tighter grip on your hand told you that he had appreciated it. Cove? Chippy Cove, says Mom. The sudden call from downstairs caught you both unaware. You nearly forgotten the world outside your room. From the guilty look on his face, Cove had done the same. Just had a call. Cove's mom is ready to go, says Mom. If you're quick, she might keep the mandated motherly smothering to a minimum, says Mom. You doubted that, but it was nice that Mom and Miss Priest had their strange sense of humor in common. Your eyes met Cove's. Wordlessly, you headed downstairs together. Each step on the way there was painfully slow, like he was trying to delay the inevitable. His whole body tensed, leaving the house, and Cove froze altogether before you both could cross the street.
Oh.
The doors open. Dad must be taking her stuff out, says Cove. He swallowed hard. She's really gonna leave, says Cove. I'm gonna go with the last one. This isn't the last time you'll ever see her. I know. But I got used to having her here, says Cove. Yeah. It was hard to think of a word where you didn't have both of your moms living at home with you, so you couldn't even imagine how hurt Cove must have been feeling knowing his mom was leaving. You thought you saw his bottleneck quiver just before he turned his head away from you. We don't have to head over if you don't want to. No, it'll be worse if I miss her leaving, says Cove. Okay. At least some of the conflict wearing on his face erased a bit. Together you went across the street and inside his house, finding his parents in the living room, surrounded by his mom's packed things. Hey kids, says Cove's dad. Good thing. I just called the taxi, says Kara. Says Cove.
Hi.
And hi, Chippy. So glad to see you today. It was fabulous getting to know you this summer, says Kara. I finally got to put a face to the name I've heard so many times. She wrinkled and Cove pouted on cue over the teasing. I'm really happy I got to meet you, too. Hopefully it won't be long before we see each other again, says Kara. Nodding, Kara turned her attention back to her boys. She patted Cliff on the arm with a warm smile, and then she enveloped Cove in a crushing hug. Initially, Cove squirmed to break free from her grip, but his mom was unfazed and kept him locked in place. Heartbeats later, he gave in and hugged her back tightly.
I'm so glad.
I'm so happy this trip was a success, says Cove's dad. Cliff looked like he was bursting with pride. Well, not 100% success, but still passing grade, I think, says Cole's dad. Thinking back on everything that happened this summer, he started to look sheepish. Cliff stretched the side of his head and awkward chuckle escaped Cove. There was ways it could have gone smoother. I'm still keeping that in mind for the future, says Cove's dad.
All right.
Good for you, Cliff. And I'll be trying harder to stay in the loop, says Kara. He watched as Cove smiled softly at both his parents, and you felt relieved seeing how much the whole family had come together since you had first met them. Despite any underlying troubles, love was still there. After that wasn't long before the taxi arrived. Rolling up in front of the house in a clear view of the open door. Car stood up, smiling sadly.
Well.
That's my ride, says Kara. Yeah, says Mr. Holden Cove. The mansion reply got a chuckle out of Kara as you all filled out of the house. Father and son went with Kara's bags in hand. Once outside, you spotted your family waiting by the street, and to your surprise, Derek was also with them. He stood uncomfortably and waved as soon as you noticed him.
What's up?
Hey, Chippy, hi, Cove. When did you get here? I asked. My dad dropped me off just a little bit ago. Thought I could visit one more time before school started, says Derek.
Sorry.
You picked a busy time, sorry, says Cove. Derek couldn't even look at Cove. He nervously kept rolling a pillow with the bottom of his shoe.
Sorry.
I wasn't even thinking that your mom would be leaving today. I'm sorry, dude, says Cove. Says Derek. What? You're not interrupting anything. You're always welcome here, says Cove's dad. It would have been sad if I didn't get to say goodbye before leaving, says Kara. I think so too, says Cove. It was apparent Derek would have preferred to have gotten there at a more opportune moment. He never liked seeming impolite, but their reassuring words smoothed his worries. The tension he was holding in his body lessened, and he looked like he was feeling much more like himself. Bye, Derek. It was fun getting to know you, says Kara. Bye, ma'am. Is there anything I can do to help, says Derek.
Nah.
Don't worry yourself over that. We're just about set, says Cove's dad. In a short amount of time, Cliff had gathered and packed the bags into the trunk. Kara took one last look at everyone and sighed. Alright, I don't want to keep the driver waiting. It's time to head out, says Kara. The little crowd that had formed around started their chorus of farewells and well wishes traveling, but Kara still made no move to get into the taxi. She placed her attention on Cove. I'll call you when I get to the airport and when I make it to Nevada, says Kara. Also, you better call the moment you walk in the door at home. Otherwise, we'll be wondering all night if you got into trouble on the way there, says Cove's dad.
Can do.
I can do that, says Carter. And could you call tomorrow too, so I can tell you how school went, says Cove. Of course. I want to hear all about it, says Carter. Carter put a hand on Cove's head affectionately, ruffled his hair one last time. She then let go, only to move onto squeezing his cheeks in her hands instead. Mom, says Cove.
Cove.
I love you so much, baby, says Kara. She was chuckling by the time she freed him and rounded things off with a smile. Tapped the tip of his nose. Cove rubbed his face with a grin. Finally, she walked to the car while waving and took her seat in the taxi. Cliff hooked an arm around Cove's shoulder and kept him close as it began to pull away. For a moment, Cove looked up at his dad and then wrapped an arm across his back.
Bye.
Bye, Mom, says Cove. Bye. Travel safe, says Cove's dad. Kara rolled down the window and stuck her head out of it. She waved again while blowing kisses at Cove and Cliff. "See you again," says Kara. Before she was out of sight, you decided to wave goodbye. As the taxi headed down the road, you stuck your hand in the air to send her off. The cab turned down another road and completely disappeared from view. Cove let go of his dad and took a few steps out into the empty street, still looking in the direction his mom went. He smiled quietly, deep in thought. You got the impression Cove was feeling better than he was earlier. He was finally content with the way things were. The summer breeze brought a sweet-sounding jingle across the way. It was the wind chime you had given Cove. He had hung it at the front of his house, and it became a very familiar sound in this neighborhood. You jumped a bit when your mom put a hand on your shoulder, pulled you away from your thoughts. She smiled when you looked at her. "This was a great vacation, huh?" asked Mom. I'm gonna go with this one. Summer isn't over until the second I fall asleep. No naps for you then. Can't risk you accidentally ending summer a few hours too early for the rest of us, says Mom. Chuckling, you shook your head amused. Cove walked back over to the group, still generally happy. Derek grinned at him welcomely, and everyone else there smiled at him, even Elizabeth.
Well?
Says Ma. Ma clapped her hands together, bringing everyone's attention back to the present. It's almost lunchtime. I think I'll put something special together, says Mom. And her eyes sparkled with a plan, and Mom smiled. I bet you could use some help with that, says Mom. That'd be absolutely wonderful, says Mom. Derek glanced between the two, his eyebrows furrowed. Is there something I could do? Asked Derek. Your moms exchanged a fond expression. Ma shook her head.
How sweet.
That's very sweet, Derek, but it's alright, says Mom. It's not your job. Technically, your dad left you under Cliff's watch. You're meant to be taken care of by him, not doing chores for the neighbors, says Mom. Mom laughed a little over her own joke. You watched Derek look away, discouraged.
It's okay.
I don't mind, says Derek. He was a little bashful about it. He wondered if Mom's joke had just reminded him that he wasn't initially meant to be invited to lunch. It was getting a little awkward. Mom grinned sympathetically. Her comment was meant to lighten the mood, not bring it back down. Ma tried again to get things moving forward. Why don't you kids go have fun? You all can come back in about an hour. We'll make enough for everyone, says Mom. Mom nodded in agreement.
Sounds good?
Another stunning idea, Lonnie, says Mom. Thanks, says Cove.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, says Derek. That sounds like a plan. Then I don't want to cramp your style. I've got some stuff to work on, so I can be out of your hair this afternoon, says Cove's dad. You should come by later too. No reason you should be the odd man out, says Mom. Mom seemed amused as Cliff rubbed his neck nervously. He grinned waveringly but pleased smile.
Thanks very much.
I appreciate the invite, says Cove's dad. He looked over the assumed crowd with knowing glances. I can help too. With as many people as you're feeding, that's going to be a lot of food, says Cove's dad. Didn't you hear what I told Derek? It wouldn't be fair to make you cook when you're the ones who are invited you in. We're the ones that invited you in. Ma raised an eyebrow when Cliff waved it off.
Come on.
I insist. Derek would be missing time with his pals. This would be a break for me. I'm quite the chef, says Cove's dad. Ma and Mom exchanged further glances before Mom shrugged.
True.
An airtight argument, says Mom. If you're sure, we'll be happy to have you, Chef Cliff, says Mom. Cliff's grin widened and seemed more hyped when you expect him to be about helping with lunch. Cove shook his head, a fond smile on his face. Then all of us grown-up people will be heading inside. I assume the rest of you kiddos are staying out, asked Mom. Maybe not all of them, says Mom. Ma tilted her head. Silent question for Elizabeth. Your sisters thought for a moment. Your sister thought for a moment.
All right.
I'll stay with the kids, says Elizabeth.
That's fantastic.
That's great, says Mom. Both your moms smiled at her, while Derek and Cove didn't seem to appreciate her phrasing. But with the plan decided, all three parents waved and headed for your house. It was just you teenagers now. Elizabeth looked at you and the others, a cautious expression on her face.
So?
So what now? Asked Elizabeth. You silently wondered if Elizabeth only stayed out with you to avoid getting roped into work. Then again, she could just generally want to hang out. You couldn't tell with your sister. Cove spoke up after no one else did to answer Elizabeth's question. Want to go down to the shopping street? It's been a while, and I don't think there's a lot of other things we could agree on, says Cove. Yeah, sure, says Elizabeth.
Awesome.
Sounds awesome to me. Unlike you guys, I haven't been there in 1,001 times. It's new to me. Let's do it. You strolled across the road as a group down to the beach and then to the lift. It took less than 15 minutes to arrive. One of the conveniences of Sunset Bird. The four of you looked around at the familiar shops, trying to see if anything caught your attention this time. Derek was the most enthusiastic. He checked out every stall with his eyes wide with wonder. Elizabeth and Cove were in good spirits as well. That's so cool, says Derek. He ran over to the street musician who was currently doing a card trick for a group of enchanted tourists. Derek clapped when the magician showed a middle-aged man his card. Derek turned back to the group with a curious gleam on his face. Excuse me. What does it take to perform here anyway? Do you have to ask somebody, or do you just show up and start doing stuff? Asked Derek. Who would you even ask? It's a public street, says Elizabeth. Hey, Miss Mayor, can I pull a rabbit out of my hat? Please, Flopsy is well behaved, I promise. Derek chuckled, his eyes searching up and down the scene. Maybe there's a boss of shopping street. On the shopping street. No one does any of this around my neighborhood. It's just regular stores behind walls. It's different if someone wants a real store, but here I'm pretty sure people are just putting their little shows whenever they want to do whatever. That's so neat. We would be allowed to do something too, says Derek. Cove laughed and Derek began almost vibrating with excitement. Elizabeth rolled her eyes. What could we do? Asked Cove. Well, I don't know what. Not yet. I mean, I just found out it's possible. You know, says Derek. But there's gotta be something. We know cool stuff. I'm pretty sure if we think about it, we could plan a show that really get a crowd pumped. Okay. You thought it was a great idea and wanted to be part of it. I'm in. Woo, says Derek.
Nice.
I knew I could count on you. Now we just need to act. Come to us, says Derek. Right. With some amusement, the gang continued to pursue the stalls. Elizabeth found some earrings with a dangling badly misspelled globe that everyone laughed at. Cole picked up Blob as Iceland, but Derek thought it had to be Greenland. You know, this is a world with what looks like 9 continents. I think you're both wrong, says Elizabeth. You want to decide with Cove. It looks like ice, and to me.
I know.
Right? Asked Cove. Suddenly, Cove froze. You stared at him, and then tried to see what caught his attention. When you saw a familiar face down the way, it all made sense. Between the crowds, his bright hair stood out like a neon green bowl in kitchen sink. It was Jeremy. Oh God, not that kid. Not that kid. Jeremy slowly drifted his eyes down the street, and his eyes widened in mutual recognition. He definitely noticed you. Derek frowned and Cove tensed up. You couldn't help but remember the last time you seen Jeremy at Miranda's birthday party. No wonder Cove was already defensive. You stood there shocked. Why was Jeremy here? Of all days, he could go shopping. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. Her gaze swept over Jeremy without a hint of a clue. Jeremy simply scuffed to himself and waded deeper into the crowd of people. Derek relaxed and exhaled loudly. I'm glad he's not going to start anything, says Derek. He peeked over at Elizabeth with a tiny smirk. See, that was the mean kid, says Derek.
What? What?
Huh? Asks Elizabeth. She still didn't get it. That first summer that hadn't made nearly as much of an impression on her as it did for Derek, but he smiled and waved it off. Just forget about it, says Derek. Just forget about him. Already have, says Elizabeth. He laughed, and Cove smiled lightly. He seemed in a much better mood now that Jeremy was gone. Your eyes wandered over to where Jeremy disappeared. You hadn't forgotten the day you met him either. He was going to be in town for a vacation with the parents he hated. That glimpse was probably the last time you would ever see him. You mentioned that realization to everyone. Jeremy's probably gone for good now. It's time for him to go back to wherever he's from.
Yeah! Yeah!
Guess we don't have to worry about that guy anymore, says Derek. Derek kicked a little rock in the road. It clattered forward, then rolled under a stall. But I still think it's kind of sad Jeremy turned out to be, well, like he is. It would have been nice to make another friend, says Derek. Cove shook his head. He was clearly not broken up over what might have been. Maybe he'll become nicer in the future. Elizabeth rolled her eyes at the strange farewell to the odd boy, not interested in the slightest. She clearly didn't understand his impact, and at this point she didn't want to understand. Jeremy was unlike anyone you had ever met before. You thought he was kind of pitiful. And the group moved on from the stall and from Jeremy. It didn't take long for everyone to return to the joking. You all enjoyed what little time had left. As Elizabeth mentioned, the hour was almost up. the little trip had flown by. Lunch must have been waiting for you now. Derek bounced on the ball of his feet.
Kick.
Come on, guys, let's get going so we can eat. I'm starving, says Derek. Phew, I had enough walking around already. Cole stretched one of his arms lazily. Let's go then, says Cove. You looked at him up presently. You asked Cove to carry you back to the house. Hey, Cove. Yeah? Asked Cove. Could you carry me back home?
What?
Says Cove. Cove turned red, obviously flustered. You explained you wanted a piggyback ride. I want a piggyback ride, and you're the only one big enough to give me one. Cove sighed and shook his head. Elizabeth and Derek became a chorus of laughter. Come on, Cove, it'll be fun. Alright, says Cove. Cove stepped over to you. He looked like he couldn't believe what he was doing. Your lips quivered into a large smile. Aw, yeah, thanks. He carefully crouched down in front of you so that you could climb on. It wasn't hard to hop on. He slipped his arms under your legs and did his best to lift you. It was wobbly, but he managed to stand all the way up. Elizabeth watched with a smirk on her face while Derek laughed even harder. It was fair to say that your antics were entertaining. You were glad Cole went with it. Cove carried you home, but he seemed pretty bashful about the situation. He struggled with how much to grip around you and whether or not he should try to reposition things. But along with all that, he also seemed to feel some pride to be carrying you. It was a pleasant walk home, and in no time you had made it back. Derek got in the front door and held it open for everyone as each of you moseyed inside. The three parents were still in the kitchen. They looked up and waved. Welcome back, everyone, says Mom. You made it just in time, says Coach Dad.
Hey!
Hope you're hungry, says Mom. When Cove had brought you inside, the parents couldn't help but notice the odd conveyance. Your moms were unsure, and Cove and Mr. Holden raised an eyebrow.
Everything okay?
Did you pull something, Chippy? Asked Mom. I'm okay. Cove, you've gotten so strong, says Mom.
Good kid.
And reliable too. What a guy, says Cove's dad. Cove rolled his eyes at the commentary, then started walking to your couch. He bent down and you let yourself plop back on the couch. Thanks for the lift. Cove exhaled loudly and shook out his arms. He seemed relieved that he made it. So did everyone have a nice time out? Asked Mom. She gestured for people to take a seat at the table. Plates and silverware have already been placed out. You took her normal seat. Elizabeth sat across from you, and Derek took the seat to your left. Cove sat on your right, but he blushed a little and began fidgeting with his silverware. His dad was the first to pick up his extra awkwardness, but your moms weren't far behind. The parents shared looks at Cove's reaction. It seemed that he was struggling with how to act normal around his dad or your parents, or both, after what happened between the two of you upstairs.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we had a great time, says Derek. It was fine, says Elizabeth. I had fun, says Cove. Yeah, the bank heist went off without a hitch. Jokingly, of course. Your joke got some chuckles going around the table. That's good in my book, says Cove's dad. Cautiously, Mr. Holden sat in the empty seat across from Cove. He smiled at you and all the other kids. Mom set down a platter full of water glasses and on the table she looked down at the gathering. It's a good thing we have 8 chairs. Can't remember the last time we've had a group this big over for a meal, says Mom. Can you pass the drinks down to the other side? Make sure you all get one, says Mom. Sure, says Derek. Those close to the cups obligated to started offering waters around. Speaking of water, as you passed Cove his drink, your hands touched. Cove froze. You had already let go, not yet realizing that he was too distracted to function in in that moment. The glass fell down to the table, landing on the sharp clatter of glass on the wood. Cove scooted his chair back with a restrained shout.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll just get a towel or something, says Cove. He looked around in front of a frantic panic, as if an object to soak up the water would magically appear if he turned his head fast enough. His dad bit his lip in worry, rising from his feet, from his own seat.
Well.
Cove, what's going on? You've been a little out of it today, says Cove's dad. Did something happen? Asked Mom. Cove tensed, frozen again. He stared at the water on the tabletop as if he wanted to sink into it. You accidentally blurted it out. We kissed. He spilled it out without a thought, like the water had spilled before. Cove gasped, and his hands shot up to cover his quietly darkening face. It was silent as everyone processed. Silent. Ha, says Mom. Both Mom and Ma started to laugh, and that snapped people out there surprised. Mr. Holden slapped a hand over Cove's shoulder. Congrats, says Cove's dad. Cove flinched at the touch, but still said nothing. His hands might have well been glued to his head. Elizabeth shook her head, and you could hear her, "Can you believe this?" line in the motion. He really is your special boy, says Elizabeth. Derek grinned at you and Cove. Even if he couldn't see, he at least was happy for you. Now I'm sure we all knew this was coming sooner or later, says Mom.
It happens.
It happens.
I had hoped you could have waited a couple more years, but what can you do, says Mom.
Now.
It's a wonderful thing that you both like each other, but Mom is right that you're both young. We'll just have to chaperone you if you ever want to go on dates, says Mom.
Nice work.
Nice work.
I'd be happy to help with that too, whenever it's needed, says Cove's dad. Cove quickly fell back in his seat. His hands hadn't moved, while his expression was unreadable. The color of his skin had reached extreme red. He crushed forward, his head smushed the table surface somehow curled up even more from his embarrassment. Isn't that still wet? Asked Elizabeth. No response was given. At least with his hands there, his face should have been somewhat protected from the water. I'm gonna go with the third one. You felt good for telling your friends and family something so important. And they said they're kind of accepting it, and so yeah, it's cool. You didn't want those feelings to be a secret. It was a relief that it was out in the open. The parents laughed more, all three of them, with wide, beaming grins on their faces. Our families are truly uniting now, then, says Mom. This will be the Holden Prince plans for meal together, or Prince Holden plan. I'm not sure which has a better ring to it, Cisco's dad. Their eyes were wide and kept shooting furtive looks at the door. Apparently, the grown-ups were making this too much for even him. He seemed to be one of the few people concerned for Cole's impression of a withdrawn, red-eared, slender turtle. You good, bros? Asked Derek. Derek whispered encouragingly to his flattened friend. Meanwhile, Elizabeth was still unimpressed. And then finally you heard a squeak. It was Cove.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
Please, can we please not talk about this anymore? Please, asked Cove. Oh, sure. I think that's enough for now. We've got to eat lunch after all, says Mom. Food was placed on the table, and Derek started to fill his plate with the others following suit. Cove sighed quietly as lunch started up in earnest. Mr. Holden gave his son another pat on the back. Cove slowly straightened back up, and you helped him get a towel and clean the water dripping everywhere at this point. You caught eyes with him and turned and tried to gauge if he was unhappy with you because of this. Thankfully, he gave no impression of that. The affirmation he showed back in your room was strong as ever. As everything got set up, Ma shaded Elizabeth to take her elbows off the table.
Now.
And you shouldn't slouch, says Mom. She pointed to Mr. Holden, who was leaning forward with both arms on the table. Oops, says Cove's dad. Mr. Holden seemed unsure about all the sudden attention and carefully rearranged his posture to something suitable for a fancy dinner. He smiled sheepishly at Mom. Elizabeth rolled her eyes and Ma gave a level look at her. You shouldn't be impolite to a guest in the house either, says Mom. Elizabeth groaned. Long suffering Ma giggled and Mr. Holden chuckled.
Not bad.
A lot of you could learn a thing or two from Derek. He has the best manners here, says Mom. Derek blushed, but it was true. His posture was upright and formal. He even held his fork gracefully. His table manners, on top of all his attempts to aid your parents, made him the model of meal attendee behavior.
Aww.
It's nothing, says Derek. It's true, though. You have been a lovely guest, says Mom. I've noticed that, too. It's always nice when you stay over, Derek, Cisco's dad. Derek smiled and sat a little taller than his chair. And you do have anything good to say about our other guests? And do you have anything good to say about our other guests? Asked Elizabeth. She looked deliberately at Cove with a teasing smirk. Or is there just nothing to say? Asked Elizabeth. Well, Cove is my number one, but he does still clean his hands by wiping them on his pants. Cove frowned at that and absentmindedly brushed his hands on his pant legs. Your mom's laughed lightly.
There.
Elizabeth, you should know, after all these years, Cove is hardly a guest anymore. Cove smiled awkwardly. Thanks, says Cove. You complimented Derek on his politeness. It's cool how you know all these manner things. Oh, thank you, says Derek. He seemed more embarrassed by getting a compliment from a kid his age. Everyone ate their meal together and continued to hang out for the afternoon. After the food, you had others played a couple of games and talked about plans for the upcoming year. Time passed by quickly, and soon it was time to part ways. Mr. Holden talked to your moms, and Cove drifted over to you, knowing that as soon as his dad finished up, he would be leaving. It'd be cool to stay, but we have some stuff to do before everything closes today, says Cove.
Okay.
Yeah, bye. Could you move? I need the phone, says Elizabeth. Cove raised an eyebrow, and Elizabeth impatiently gestured behind him. Cove realized he was standing right in front of where the receiver was placed. He sidestepped out of the way and shook his head, clearly thinking Elizabeth was rushing too much. Your sister made a beeline for the phone and started dialing the number of what you figured was one of her friends. Knowing Elizabeth, she was going to be there for a while. She was going to be on there for a while. You, Cove, and Derek shuffled closer to the door. It seemed like Mr. Holden was wrapping up his conversation, so everyone's saying their various farewells.
Talk to you later.
See you later, Cove. We've got to do this again sometime, says Derek. Yeah, see you, says Cove. Cove turned to you and smiled slightly. Bye, Chippy, says Cove. You hug Cove goodbye. You step forward and spread your arms wide. Cove only had a moment to react before you encircled him in your arms. Cove hugged you back tightly, and his chest rumbled as he laughed. His cheeks were slightly red, especially when he looked over and noticed that Derek had watched the whole thing. Derek smiled amusedly. He offered Cove a high five, and the two boys clapped their hands together. Cove and his dad left soon after that. Your parents started cleaning up the house, and Elizabeth was still chatting to her friends on the phone. It was just you and Derek left. He elected to stay outside in front of the house to wait for his dad to pick him up. You decided to keep your guest company, although he was originally Cove's visitor. A light summer breeze blew through your hair, and Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot. Thanks for waiting with me, says Derek. He kicked at the ground, distractedly.
Well,
Dad's still gonna be a while, so do you want to go for a walk? Asked Derek. Sure, I don't mind. The two of you walked down the street again, just wandering without a distinction planned. It was a quiet stroll. Too quiet for Derek being the company. You turned to him when you had noticed that he wasn't saying a word. That was unusual. Derek always had something he could chat about. You weren't sure if you should ask about it. Somehow you ended up at the old park near the beach. You glanced over to Derek once more, still expecting him to say something any second now. However, nothing came from him. In fact, you now notice a frown creeping on his face. Derek smiled when he realized you were watching. At least his mouth was turned up. There wasn't anything that really felt happy in the expression. He turned away and the smile fell off his face. His eyes stared intently at the ground and you raised an eyebrow. I'm gonna do the second one. If you want to talk about something, I'm here. I'm a little sad, says Derek. It's just with school starting back up again, it's going to be harder to visit. I'm going to have homework and clubs and practices and everything else, says Derek.
This sucks.
It really sucks. We don't go to we go to different schools, says Derek. His face screwed up and his fists were closed tightly together. This was really concerning him. What if we don't have time? Asked Derek. You channeled some optimism to the conversation. We'll make time. We can talk over the phone and have plans for weekends. It'll be okay. Derek looked up at the sky. It was orange and purple with little wisps of clouds scattered around. A plane flew high with a jet stream traveling behind it. I hope we'll always be friends, no matter what, says Derek. Even if we don't see each other for a long time, or if we get busy, I still hope. He cut himself off and met your eyes. There was something serious to him. Sincerely worried that you'd fall out of friendship. gonna go with the first one. I hope so too. I want us to be friends forever. Derek smiled mostly to himself. He seemed a little more like the usual. And for sure, we have to make the most of next year. Then the year after that, and the year after that, says Derek. He rambled on for a while about things. We'll just make the most of every year, says Derek. Right. He smiled and felt like your friendship was still strong. You didn't spend much longer at the park after that. Derek didn't want to miss his dad, so both of you made your way back to the street, back to your street. After Derek went back home, you decided to settle in for the night. Stretching your arms over your head, you noticed that the living room and the phone were free. You call Lee. I'm going to save it here and come back to it later because one, I'm running out of time and I'd really like to get some rest for a while. So I'm just going to save it there. Save it right there. So, Again, thanks for watching on my YouTube channel, and don't forget to click the like button, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And again, I'd like to encourage you to please go to my Patreon account and become a Patreon contributor, so that the money can go to a worthy charity. Okay, so see you guys later, and thanks again.